You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Rolling.
Roll.
Don't use any of this. Don't tell
Okay,
me.
carry 3.
Hi.
They love you. You know.
This is Princess Leia Organa. You're listening to Planet Leia.
Permission is granted to land on Planet Leia. Brought to you by Fantha Tracks. Here are your hosts, Clair Henry and Johanna Nybelius.
It's good to be back and welcome to episode 6 of Planet Leia. It's been a long time coming and I'm Clair Henry and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host
Johanna Nybelius, and I won't ask you to spell that since it's a Swedish name, because as you might notice with my accent, I'm actually from Sweden.
So Johanna and I have rekindled and got ourselves back together on the Star Wars train and have taken a look at Planet Leia and what would we like to do with it. So we're going to quickly introduce ourselves for those who maybe haven't heard us talk before on Fantha Tracks or have met us in conventions. So my name's Clair Henry. I'm originally from Northern Ireland and I became a Star Wars fan at the ripe old age of 4. I'm 48 now. So work out, that was a long time ago, but not in a galaxy too far, far away in Bangor in Northern Ireland. My granddad and my dad took me to it and I simply fell in love with it and fell in love with the best character ever to come out of a film, Princess Leia. And that was it. I was hooked when I was 4 and I'm hooked now still and I'm 48. And I don't think that's ever going to change. What about you, Johanna?
Well, I actually got hooked on Star Wars when I was like a preteen. I was 12. I was going up, turning on the TV, watching Empire Strikes Back, and there was Han Solo riding in on his, very blue coat. I know it's brown, but to me it was blue on his taunt. I was hooked. I sat there watching the whole film. The next week, because it was a Saturday feature, I had to watch Return of the Jedi on TV as well. I love the films. I had no one to talk to, and then came like the special editions. I actually got a chance to see them in the cinema. I forced my sister's stepdaughter, because I needed an alibi to go and watch Star Wars. I forced her to join me and watch all the films. About that time, I also happened to go on the internet for the first time, and I realized just how many Star Wars fans there were out there. I connected to a lot of Star Wars fans that I still have as my best friends today, and I was hooked. I'm a really huge Star Wars fan.
We're going to take Planet Leia on a little bit of a journey, and it's going to be a bit of a self-indulgent journey for ourselves and hopefully something for you guys as well who are listening to get involved with and contribute to. And we're going to take a journey through Star Wars from a female point of view. And we don't just mean the characters or the actresses. We're talking about Star Wars in the widest context, aren't we?
Everything with a female gaze.
Absolutely. We decided that we wanted to relaunch the podcast and have a good think about who influences us, who excites us in Star Wars, and where we want to go, taking a look at all these female aspects and how it's bringing the universe together, both in the Star Wars context and in the fandom context. And so that's when our journey started. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do a little bit of research in this and I'm going to Google Star Wars and I'm going to take a look at Star Wars and women. And that's where our journey began. We Googled Star Wars women, we Googled Star Wars female, and we Googled Star Wars girls. And if you were to do that, you'd probably come up with the same as us, which was across the top, 5 or 6 different images of Leia or Padme. That doesn't sound so bad to me. Princess Leia, the main character in the original trilogy. Padme and Amidala, the main characters in the prequels. But the slant of it is
Sexy Leia.
Sexy Leia or beautiful, coy-eyed Leia.
Or the Padme is a very childish Padme. It's like, it's for little children, little girls who want to be Padme.
Correct. Then you scroll down and the top 4 questions that are asked are these ones. What's the first one? Who is the hottest female in Star Wars? Who's the main female in Star Wars? How are women represented in Star Wars? And who is the best female character in Star Wars? And again, it's just a bit, yeah, isn't it?
It's definitely not what made me a Star Wars fan and what has kept me going as a female Star Wars fan. No, I've never Googled, like, how would I look if I looked like sexy Leia?
Exactly. And the thing about it is that's not what we're going to be about in this podcast. We're going to look at it from all different angles, and we're not going to lie. We will be looking at fashion, I'm quite sure, at some points, and makeup and all the rest of it. But it was just an interesting thought that when you Google women in Star Wars, it's an interesting one. Then I decided, well, do you know what I'll do? I'll Google it in starwars.com. Go to starwars.com, tap it in. What do you see? Well, first of all, you see articles that are ridiculously out of date. I'm not going to lie. The top one, Force of Fashion 2015. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's the We Love Fine fashion collection, which was absolutely lovely. And I may have a dress from that. And then
meet the women working behind the scenes of Star Wars, which is great.
That's brilliant. We're definitely going to be talking about that on the podcast. What do women of Star Wars mean to you? And that's really interesting one. That was a recent one. That was this year. They talked to 5 women who work within the Star Wars community or are part of the Star Wars community, such as Christian Baver, Callie Knox, Swapna Krishna, Jennifer Landa, and Amy Rishu. And they all talk about their favourite women in Star Wars. And then we sort of go down the list and it's just pretty out of date. It is interesting, but not much up to date at the minute. Or it's sort of things that tell me something I didn't know already. Would that be a good way of putting it?
Yeah, it definitely would be. And it's like, yes, this is if you want to get girls fairly interested in Star Wars. But for us who are already Star Wars fans, it is like we want to really get deeper into the women of Star Wars, everything that they have done and how they still influence the whole galaxy and also how it's created. Like, you really want to go deeper.
And that's what I think for us, slightly more in-depth Star Wars fans. We're looking for something just a bit more into women throughout the galaxy, the making, everything, all that sort of stuff. So I had a good old look around again and I thought, right, there's got to be some interesting things, about this sort of stuff. So came across a study that was done by the LA Times by 3 people. Forgive me, please, if I pronounce their names wrong. Swethna Cannon, Andrea Robertson, and Sean Green. They did a study on women in Star Wars and they looked at it just before the rise of Skywalker. Because, of course, Rey was the main focus of the latest trilogy and her rise and fall and then rise again. But it was really interesting what they did. They looked at all 8 films, watched them, rewatched them, and continued to watch them again. One of their analysis that they did was who talked the most.
And it's really interesting that, like, if you just go by the raw numbers per movie, you have, like, Rey, she's in the top. And I mean, that's not strange since she was, like, the lead of a whole trilogy. I was really surprised, though, to see that Padme comes in second of the women. Mm-hmm. And that Leia is first on the 4th place. Rose from the new trilogy actually have more raw words than Leia has. And in my opinion, Leia is quite a talkative person. She's not exactly put down, so I was really surprised by that she doesn't have more words.
I was really surprised at Rose being in the top 4 of the females because, again, you didn't think that necessarily Rose was in it that much, but clearly had a lot of dialogue. I suppose there was the part when they were in the casino, etc. So perhaps, that's where it was. But that was based on the average number of words spoken. Interestingly, number 1 was Han Solo.
And I guess that's not that strange, though, since, I mean, he has a role in 2 of the 3 trilogies.
But I always thought it would have been Luke Skywalker when you think about how much screen time he had. They didn't release their study on screen time, so it'd be interesting to see actually screen time wise who did it. But I couldn't find anything on that one. If you just take raw numbers of words spoken in the movies. This isn't in anything else. This is just the movies, the 8 ones that they had up until The Rise of Skywalker. Padme and Leia made the top 10, but were not in the top 5. And it was just one of those things I thought, oh, okay, I quite like the way also, as a sideline, that each of Chewbacca's groans and moans and growls were counted as one. Poor old Chewie.
I'm guessing this proves that Leia is quite the action girl. She doesn't just talk, she does a lot of things. She gets into the action.
Good point. Well made. Never actually thought about it like that, but yeah, it's probably
sometimes she doesn't speak with words. She actually speaks with a blaster.
Absolutely, speaks more with actions rather than words. I quite like that. That's a good one about it.
Hi, this is Julie Dolan, the voice of Princess Leia, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. It's your only hope.
Then it got me thinking. All right, so that's the film characters and their role in it. So, and I'm just thinking about this journey about being a female in Star Wars. And I've thought, right, okay, there's lots of influencers in Lucasfilm Limited, in the Star Wars movies, in television productions.
And the whole expanded universe.
And George Lucas chose a woman to be his successor.
She is the most influential person in the last almost a decade of Star Wars.
When were we in Essen?
That was 2013.
Was that 2013? Oh my God.
So it must have been like 2012 when it was like announced that George was selling off Star Wars.
It was there in Essen where Kathleen Kennedy, the chosen one, the successor, she was walking around the convention, chatting to people, speaking to fans. That's when she met the droid builders and got them on board. Her influence is incredible on the Star Wars universe and has been chosen
to guard it, and like whatever it brings for the future, she is the one who's going to lead it into the future.
It's then made me think about, right, okay, so we've got a woman at the top. She's influencing the direction that Star Wars is going at the minute. Some of it has been really successful, some of it hasn't been successful. And then I thought, okay, well, let's take a look at then who in the wider context of Lucasfilm Limited, who do we have? When we did, and we've touched on this bit already, there's a round table panel, which was sponsored by Porsche. I wonder, did they get free Porsches?
I can be part of a panel like that if it includes a Porsche.
Well, that's what I was
just a small one. I can take a small car. I don't need a newest model.
I'm all right with that. I can take that one. And then this was actually just before the pandemic hit. So it was December 2019. There was a roundtable discussion. It included some of the leading influential females in the Star Wars production background in that time. So there was Victoria Mahoney, Kathleen Kennedy, Andy Gutierrez, who fronted the Star Wars show for quite a long time and does all the Star Wars celebrations. General Manager, Lin-Wen Brennan, Rise of Skywalker editor, Marion Brandon, Lucasfilm Director of Development. Now, to me, that sounds pretty...
That's pretty big.
Pretty guiding. Rian Roberts, then director of The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan Kenobi, Deborah Chow was on it. There was Skywalker sound effects editor, Bonnie Wild. So this panel of women is incredible. Again, there we are, women in the background, just like anybody, part of the franchise, doing what they're doing, enjoying what they're doing and doing their best. And I just thought, okay, this is making me, how do I say it? Like, my faith is restored. Would that be a good way?
Yeah, but I also think it's important to remember, like me, for a while, I was a huge expanded universe nerd. Like, I read all the books that came out. And I mean, already in the 90s, you also have a lot of women writing and drawing Star Wars, like, especially between, like, the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. You had a lot of women shaping the Star Wars universe as we know it. You have Rebecca Moesta, who with Kevin J. Anderson. Usually you just remember Kevin J. Anderson for the Young Jedi Knight, but they were written together with Rebecca. Jander Seema, who like illustrated and draws so much of the Marvel comics for a while. And it's like there have always been a lot of women working behind the scenes, shaping what we know of the Star Wars galaxy.
I mean, I literally just sat down and it was lovely. It was a whole day where I just thought about Star Wars. I actually, and this is quite an interesting one, I had Rogue One on in the background. Not an original trilogy one, but that's because I'm going to see one of them on Saturday night with a live orchestra, which I'm really looking forward to. It's nice to be back in the ring again and going to see stuff again. I thought, right, okay, so we've looked at characters, we've looked at the actresses, I'm thinking about the actresses that they played, we've looked about the influences behind Star Wars in the production line, in the development line. And then I went, oh, okay. And as you said, authors. Again, some incredible females who are influential in the canon and the direction. And I know you were saying about the expanded universe, but a lot of that is coming into the fore, is becoming canon, which is, I think, is quite heartwarming for those people in the dark days between, the old trilogy, the prequels and the new trilogy, where there was really nothing.
Well, if you love the expanded universe, you had a very vibrant galaxy there, of course. Definitely, it made the Star Wars universe survive between the trilogies.
It did.
And it's so different. I mean, when Disney took over and they did this really concentrated effort to bring all of Star Wars together and make it like it's all of a galaxy, that didn't happen in the 90s and the early 2000s because it was so more widespreading and everything and doing, but you still had a lot of women working there. But now it's really interesting because since you're doing this effort to make one story of the whole Star Wars galaxy, and you have the women working there on all aspects.
Okay, so I've had a look now at characters, the actors behind the scenes, and then of course what gels it all together are the authors. And again, taking a look, I looked at utini.com and they have a Star Wars women, and it says Star Wars books you should read if you like Star Wars women. And I thought, oh, okay. And actually, it's a really interesting piece. And I would say, having not seen this piece, but basically, I've read most of the books on their recommendations, shall we say. Quite nice. They quoted Carrie Fisher. They said, stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. You don't have to wait to be confident. Just do it. And eventually, the confidence will follow. And actually, that's kind of the way we were saying. Maybe that's why Princess Leia didn't say so much. She was more action and not a lot of talking, just gets on with it. The article talks about that for a long time, Leia seemed to be one of the only women in Star Wars, apart from Aunt Beru, bless her, and Mon Mothma. The article then starts to develop and talk about Padme and The Force Awakens, etc. And then it moves through the sequel trilogy and Paige and Zori, etc., etc. And then it moves into, and again, I never really thought about this, but if you're a gamer, you play Battlefront. What's one of the main characters in Battlefront? Eden Verso. So again, you just don't think of these things. We've got Vi Moradi, who's now on the Black Spire Outpost. Again, it just made me think about, oh, of course. So there's games.
And that's a bit showing what an old school fan I am with. I mean, I remember all the debates it was about before they knew what gender Darth Revan would have. It's still possible to play through Knight of the Old Republics ending up with a female. So I think that was really interesting. It felt like there were a lot of women back in 20 years ago, but in the last few years, it's really been obvious how many women there are in Star Wars and how many Star Wars fans there are that are female.
Exactly. So then I carried on with this article and it then reminded me about all the recent authors that we have who are exceptionally talented, and I love all their books. I've read, and when you go through the list of the authors so far, we've got Claudia Gray, an exceptional writer, and absolutely, in my opinion, has Princess Leia down to a T. Absolutely nails it. Delilah Dawson, I've read some of her books, just all these books.
And of course, you also have E.K. Johnson. Well, I mean, I remember just the pure joy of finding Queen's Shadow. It's yes, it's about Padme, it's about the handmaidens. And then we're getting more books about them because it's so well done and it's so well written.
Delilah, she wrote Phasma, and that was an exceptional book again. So, we've got so many influential books, both junior fiction, senior fiction, written by women. But I know that everybody who's read them has really enjoyed them. There's another aspect of women, females in Star Wars. And I'm just thinking, good God, this is an incredible expanse. There's an incredible expanse of women in it. And was I female blind? I think I probably was, because I'm just enjoying what they're all doing.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
And then, of course, I'm not going to be stereotypical, but I am, because I'm going to talk about fashion. And it's very close to my heart. I know it's very close to your heart as well, Johanna.
My heart as well.
I just remember the first time when I went to Star Wars Celebration in London and discovered the mecca that is her universe, and all down to Ashley Eckstein, and the fact that I wasn't having to buy men's t-shirts or men's shirts, that I could walk in and I could get a absolutely banging Star Wars t-shirt, which I still wear, to be fair, and it still glows in the dark after dear knows how many years.
I still have my first Her Universe t-shirt as well. It's like the red one with the Padme Amidala and the Art Nouveau signed with the whole Skywalker family. It's like, yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, mine's the one with the lightsabers that spells out Star Wars, and a female cut with a scoop neck. That was it. It was absolutely brilliant. And again, then that led us into a wider range of fashion by some predominant fashion designers, such as Emma Shipley. She's now working mainly she works for herself, Emma Shipley, but she specializes in scarves, wallpaper, cushions, etc. But she did a capsule collection for Star Wars when The Force Awakens comes out, and she did cashmere scarves and cashmere wraps, and I bought one, and I can wear that wherever I want, whenever I want, and people don't know it's Star Wars until they look really close.
Just other fairly established brands as well, like the Pandora, if you go into jewelry and you like Pandora, and they have the whole Star Wars set with charms you can do for your bracelets, and yes.
Absolutely. It's brilliant. And then Pat McGrath, one of the UK's high-end makeup artists, she did a capsule collection, and it is amazing makeup. To see it with a Star Wars slant. She did lipstick, she did colour palettes, she did foundation. Just stunning collection. But again, female influences on a galaxy that helped me to celebrate it.
And I think that's the thing. It's just recently that marketers and everyone has really realized just how many female Star Wars fans there are. And in all ages as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I really came out as a Star Wars fan, in the small Swedish context, it was then it wasn't strange because being a Star Wars fan was such a small thing, but so that it wasn't so strange that it was really us women who were leading the way. As someone said, female Star Wars fans, well, they might not be as many, but they're 10 times as crazy as the guys, and they make up for it. But nowadays they have realized they can tap into this, and that we are so many fans. I mean, for example, not many people might know that the 501st Legion right now has a female head, and it's actually even the first, and that's the largest Star Wars fan organization in the world. And it's just strange that it's a woman who's leading it.
It's great to hear, isn't it? And hopefully, in a way, maybe we're blind to it, as I said earlier. We're maybe blind to the fact now because it is an all-encompassing fandom. It's the norm. It doesn't matter who or what or where you are. It's all-encompassing. I do think that they have worked out the untapped, shall we say, bank vaults of women in Star Wars.
Again, if you go back to the first, when you Google just women in Star Wars, of course it makes you sad that the Google algorithms, everything still brings up Sexy Leia is the top result.
It's a shame because actually what you would hope to do is you Google Star Wars women. What would I like to see? I'd like to see the irregular choice collection again. I can tell you now that collection was, and you did it too, when it came out, the shoes, the Star Wars shoes, they were sold out within 24 hours.
And I miss them, and I'm still so jealous of the fact that you own a pair of irregular choice shoes. I'm like, I want them.
I may own 2 pairs.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you.
Sorry, they're beautiful.
I was a poor student at the time. Couldn't can I afford the shoes that? And I was like, yes, you should have afforded the shoes. When I was a student, an auction house in the town where I was studying in Sweden actually had, the original Laponia necklace. From the 70s that no, I'm a poor student. I can't afford paying. I think the price was done maybe $300 or $400 in today's value. Why didn't I buy it? I was an idiot.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, Johanna. So if anybody from Irregular Choice is listening, do it again. Tap into it. The Columbia collection, the Princess Leia jacket. I went online at stupid o'clock in the morning. I got one. It sold out within 2 hours. Women are an untapped wealth. Take your Hasbro pulses and take them away, as interesting as they are for some people, but you can make a damn sight more and get more people involved when you widen the range. The Pat McGrath makeup, it sold out in 2 hours.
And just handbags.
Oh, please.
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Music to my ears. Heroes and villains.
And there could be some. I actually had a bit of an existential crisis because I worn out all my Star Wars handbags that I bought last time at Celebration in 2017 and 19, and now they're all worn out. What am I to do without a nice Star Wars handbag?
Yes, I have got my last one. My 2 bowler bags are gone. They're shot to pieces, and they're a good 20 years old. My R2-D2 lounge fly is coming apart. My black lounge fly bowler bag, Darth Vader one, patent, beautiful. It only comes out in special occasions now. It goes with me to Christmas parties.
Yeah. I have my Han Solo, I think it's Loungefly as well. That's my special. I can't wear it as much. Then my, the Star Wars with the roses fabric, it's worn out. And my heroes and villains, rebels, it disappeared.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So if you just take a look at all those things that we've just talked about, it's incredible. There's so much there for us. And sometimes if we don't think about it, like we've just gone through, blinking an eye and you've missed it, haven't you? You've heard how we've talked about the wide range of female influences in Star Wars, how they permeate through everything in the galaxy, from their characters to the books to the background in Lucasfilm Limited to the authors to fashion. They all have influenced and permeated through our fandom. We don't necessarily want to spark a great debate about gender and roles in Star Wars, because really our mission with this podcast is this. It's self-indulgent, and it's something that Johanna and I are passionate about. And what we're going to be doing over the next series of podcasts is we're going to look at the Star Wars universe and how it's influenced us and what interests us and what excites us. We kind of came up with a top 5, shall we say, of female influences that excites us and makes us passionate about Star Wars. So Johanna, you go first.
I can go first, and you have to go with number 1. It's Leia. You can't be a female Star Wars fan without having a relationship in some kind with Princess Leia. She's the original Star Wars leading lady. I'm old enough that it was the original trilogy that was my first love, and okay, I might have gotten a preteen crush on Han Solo, but Leia was there from the start, and the way she has influenced a lot of women. And also, with Leia, you can't take it away from Carrie Fisher. The way that she was very open with the fans, with everything. It's Leia is the queen of Star Wars. She might have been a princess, but she will always be royalty. And it's not just royalty, she's the queen of Star Wars.
I agree. No, I'm not going to lie, and it'll be no surprise to anybody that Leia's also my number one choice. And again, I remember coming home from that cinema in 1900 and Frozen to Death, 1979, and saying, I want to be that woman. I want to be that girl. And I remember being in the middle of my grandparents on the sofa, pushing apart, getting the pole and the trash compactor. I remember doing all that. So, and again, it's hard to separate Leia from Carrie Fisher in a way, but I think probably the two are separate and two separate identities. Carrie Fisher was a character. She was, you never knew what way she was going to be. You know, she had her good days and her bad days, and I've met her on her good days and I've met her on her bad days, you know, at different conventions, etc. But she was never backwards about coming forwards.
I think that's also a reason why Leia and Carrie Fisher relate so much to the fans and why she had such a connection, because she's not the perfect woman. She's not like the perfect Hollywood idol that you just look up to. She's perfect in any way. No, she has a lot of imperfections. For me, for example, I'm a costumer. I'm doing Star Wars costuming. That's really what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And I'm also a plus-size woman. And the fact that with Leia in the sequel trilogy, I could finally do a costume that was actually made to fit a woman with curves. It was so... I love the General Leia costumes because they fit me so well. I would never do a Slay Leia or a Hot Slay Leia because I don't have the body for it, but all of a sudden... And you have this Leia, she in all ages, from she's a teenager in the original, she's a very mature woman in the sequels, and it's like... She is really everything. You can find something in all the stages of your life. You can always relate to Leia. She's basically divorced. I mean, she and Han split up. She has a son who's turned to the dark side. She has really been through hell, and she's still there. I think that's why she inspires us so much.
Yeah, I think so. So who have you got next on your list?
Next on my list is actually Marcia Lucas. She's quite a bit of a forgotten person, but really... In 1976, once George had done all the raw footage, he had a lot of footage for Star Wars. It's easy to remember it was actually Marcia who came in, edited it all, made it into the brilliant movie that would be a success, and she actually got an Oscar for it. She's uncredited in Empire Strikes Back, but she had a hand in there as well, and she is credited in Return of the Jedi, but really... She was one... I'm not sure that Star Wars had even been a success if she hadn't gone into the editing in 76 and saved the whole film project. She is the one who's gotten an Oscar for it, so she definitely deserves to be on the top of influential women of Star Wars.
Who's next?
Next on my list is Rey. I remember being on Celebration London in 2016, and you were out there on the floor, and you saw all these thousands of little girls dressed as Rey. And it was like... Within the Star Wars fandom, there are a lot of opinions about Rey as a character, but you can't get away from the fact that she was the woman who was chosen to lead the whole trilogy. And she has inspired so many little girls of dressing up as her, running around on conventions, wanting to be Rey, wanting to be the savior of the universe. I mean, that's just wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my daughter was one of those little 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds running around with a Rey costume on and her lightsaber and everything. No, I can 100% agree with that one.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Next one, I'd go for Mara Jade. I'm an old school expanded universe lover, and I wouldn't just say it's just because she was Luke Skywalker's wife in the old canon. She's also a symbol for all the women that were developed within the expanded universe, all of them who really came into their own, and Mara Jade was a really fascinating character, and I'm still going to be sad that she's been dropped and she doesn't exist in the new canon, because she was the Emperor's hand, she was sent out to kill Luke Skywalker, and she ended up marrying him. But she wasn't just the wife of Luke, she actually had her own story, and it was really an interesting story from like redemption, going back, but still being this very cool and tough woman. Maybe if you haven't seen the films, you haven't heard of Mara Jade, but if you're the least interested in the Star Wars universe outside of the films, she's one of the very many women who are out there.
And you can see her influences and how many people she's influenced when you walk around conventions. you can see that because there's lots of women and girls choose to be her, don't they?
Yeah, and I still remember being at a wedding with a Star Wars theme, and of course the groom was Luke, but the bride came in a black wedding gown because she was Mara Jade. Blue, black, and with a purple for her purple lightsaber. It looked so good.
That sounds like a perfect wedding to me. I wasn't allowed to do anything except play Leia's theme at my wedding.
Yeah, it's a bit unclear, but we think R2 was the maid of honor, but he was a bit fibbly with the ring, so...
And finally, I'm technically going to allow you to have this one.
Yes, I want to put out the handmaidens. And, it's technically a group, not just a single female. But as I said earlier, I have a tendency to go for the really unknown character. And, in The Phantom Menace, you have the handmaidens, these women standing behind the queen. What are they doing? And they are the decoys, they are mysterious. I would say for me, and I know for quite a few women, they were like the Boba Fett's of the original trilogy. You didn't know a lot about them, but you could speculate and you were intrigued and were interested in them. But at that time, no one seemed to care from Lucasfilm or Lucas Books. You didn't get, I think you had one young adult novel about her handmaidens, and that was it. And you had one 12-inch action figure of Padme as a handmaid, but you didn't have anything else. Then, all of a sudden, just a few years ago, or rather it's less than a year ago, you get these novels with the Queen's Shadow, Queen's Perils, where they really step out into their own. And you even have them in the comics. In the latest Vader comics, you have the Battle Commando handmaidens, and you realize how many people have been interested in these handmaidens. And now, after 20 years, we finally get the information we want about them. And it's because there is so much interest in them. So yes, I'm always going to be a handmaiden fan. And finally, it just took around 20 years for us to get the Battle Handmaiden. Finally actually getting to know how the names are pronounced, because they were nicely written in the 90s when they wrote The Phantom Menace, but how do you pronounce the names? You didn't know that until you get the version, the read-out version of the novel, yes, now we know how they are pronounced. But I'm still going to pronounce them as I have done for 20 years.
I feel that should be allowed. I think a group of women is definitely something that we can add into our list. What do you think?
We can go into further episodes. We can go one episode per handmaiden.
I could well imagine that you can fill it all in.
Might be a problem for Versailles, the handmaiden who gets killed in the explosion in the start of Attack of the Clones. She's seen she's going out of the ships and then she's blown up.
I love it.
She doesn't even get a line like Corday, but she's there in the background.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. I love the way. You see, look, this is the thing about it. There's so much we can eke out, isn't there, with
yes.
this? Okay, so again, I'm going left field, right field, all over the shop field. So again, when I sort of had a think about it, there's so many. So I'm going to go, obviously, Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, and I'm going, although they're two, I'm slightly merging them into one, so that gives me 4 to choose. I honestly have to say that a huge influence on my Star Wars fandom as I was older, when I, as I say, grew up a little bit, not necessarily, Ashley Eckstein, and not because of Ahsoka. I have not, I'm sorry, watched all of the Clone Wars or any, I've watched bits and pieces of them, with what she's done for female fandom in the fashion context. And I think that influence is incredible. Footwear, clotheswear, makeup, everything. So again, and just her positivity, her books, everything. So, I put my hand up to that one.
Her universe brackets, it's my everyday winter coat. So I'm wearing it every day.
I get away with wearing it to work. Nobody knows what those little symbols mean. And that's because she's designed it that way. It's brilliant. Kathleen Kennedy, the chosen one, I shall say, having briefly in a sort of a flyby when she walked past us in Essen, we were in with the children in the children's area, and she was watching my friend and our friend, actually, Andrew, dressed up as Darth Maul, playing Giant Connect 4 with a junior Han Solo, who was his son, Carl, and little mini Princess Leia, which was Sophie. And, she saw what family life is for Star Wars within the films and within the fandom and itself. It's one big family. So again, Kathy Kennedy, she's for me. She's one of them. So that's my number 3. I'm going to say, and I've developed a friendship with this person. She's great. And it's Mary Franklin. And for those who don't know Mary worked for Reed Pop and was the organizer of Star Wars celebrations. Went through the good and the bad with it all. And you know what? Every single celebration I went to, I bloomin' well enjoyed. And that was down to her coordination, her hard work with her team. And she was a fan relation in Lucasfilm Limited first, went through it that way and started organising celebrations. And then it moved into Reed Pop and she moved into Reed Pop. And for people who are fans, what's one of the big things that you look forward to? Celebrations.
I think whenever you saw or have seen Mary Franklin at a celebration, it's been so obvious how happy she is.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine all the work that goes behind organizing and coordinating a whole celebration. I'm like, it's huge, but she's always so happy. I mean, I remember when she got married to R2, I think that was in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
When they had like this little stage where you could get married to, and they had all couples going up getting married, and while Mary Franklin comes up and marries R2.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, you see all these things that you think about. It's incredible, isn't it? Number 5, Claudia Gray. Her books are absolutely superb and wonderful, and for me have influenced lots of different aspects of Star Wars that I didn't maybe necessarily think of before. So again, she's a great influence to me. I absolutely love her books and I think she's wonderful. And anytime I've ever heard her talk about her passion for Star Wars, again, you can tell she's a fan. You can tell that she gets into the in-depth and goes in behind it. So I know that that's her writer's name. I know that that's what she's called, but her Lost Stars book is just incredible. Incredible.
I think, but in many ways, it's like she managed to validate what all of us fangirls wanted Leia to be.
Yes. Yeah.
We might not have always been happy with the development of Leia as a character, but with Claudia's books, with this is the Leia that so many of us wanted her to be.
Yes.
It's it ticks all the boxes.
And even the whole conflict, how she wrote about Leia and her political career, with everybody then finding out who her father was, etc., etc. Incredibly written and very well written and plausible. That was the thing. The Master and the Apprentice that she wrote as well. Again, influences on the main characters in the prequels, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan. Again, just really influential. And I'm not going to lie, I haven't read the High Republic books yet, but again, from what I hear from people that they've said it, that they are fascinating and incredible books to read.
Hi there, this is Mike Quinn. I played Nine Num in Return of the Jedi and the new trilogy, and you're listening to Panther Tracks.
I'm really struggling to just pin down a fifth one. So then with that, I'm going to cheat. And I too am going for...
Well, I took a group as a fifth, so...
Well, I'm going to do a group one, and I'm going to call them female podcasters and their influence on me and how they all got me into... Again, a new lease of life in my Star Wars fandom. And I'm talking about the girls from Fangirls Going Rogue, the girls from Lattes with Leia, then the new generation Sky Talkers, all those guys. I sit and I listen to them and I love what they talk about. I love how they're as passionate about female characters and female influences in the Star Wars galaxy. So again, that's what I'm saying about the Star Wars and the female influence being so wide and varied. You look at it from all sorts of angles. So we're not narrowing ourselves down, are we, Johanna, shall we say?
No.
And so over the next years, I hope,
yes,
Johanna and I are going to talk female Star Wars from all different angles. As you can tell, it's not necessarily going to be characters, but we're going to be looking at women in the wider context. Obviously, we want input from you. So please tweet, message on Fantha Tracks who your influences are, why, and what you hope for the future.
Well, it would be really interesting to hear, like, who are you top 5 women? If you just write them down. Who are you top 5 women of Star Wars?
If you've had the same thoughts as we've had about this, it's not easy to do, is it, Johanna?
No.
Because you think, right, okay, here's the characters, here's the actresses. I mean, we haven't even mentioned all the different actresses or characters, you know, like Mon Mothma, leader of the Rebel Alliance that destroys the Death Star. We haven't mentioned.
We haven't even mentioned Padme much.
No.
She's like so central to the whole Star Wars universe.
Exactly. Kicked off the Skywalker trilogy, really, didn't she? Bless her. Please, get in touch, get involved. Maybe you want to recommend something. Maybe we have left out a section of Star Wars. You know, I've just thought we haven't even touched about artists, have we? Just get in touch with us. Let us know who your top 5 choices are and why. Hopefully we'll give you a shout out. It doesn't matter what gender you are either. We're going to talk about female characters, but we want everybody to be listening and we want everybody to take part. It's good to be back, isn't it, Johanna?
It's so great talking. I mean, we are gearing up now. It's that time of the year when all your Facebook memories are about like gearing up for Star Wars premieres, and it's not one this year, but you want to talk about Star Wars, so it's so lovely to be able to do that again.
It is. And what we'd like to say to you is thanks for listening to Planet Leia. It's good to be back. If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, tap in fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app in your app store on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your questions or your top 5 choices by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like, share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review, most preferably, of course, a 5-star one on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro and our Planet Leia opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for your voiceovers. So remember to tune in also, if you haven't already, into our weekly Fantha Tracks news show, Good Morning Tatooine. It's live every Sunday at 9 p.m. GMT time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific, and you can find it on Facebook and YouTube. All Johanna and I have to say for now is thank you for listening.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
That wasn't bad.